こんにちは。たこ焼きカムと申します。毎回スピーチをするときにすごく緊張しているからこのスライドは必要です。I have to see this slide to calm myself down and then just think. I told a friend of mine, every time I speak I get very nervous. And he said, just put a slide of Freddie Mercury in and think to yourself, what would Freddie Mercury do? So every time I speak, I have to show this slide to just calm myself down. So my talk is titled, Ruby Ruined My Life. And I'll talk about that near the end. But first I want to say, I'm incredibly honored to be here at the last RubyKaigi. I started coming to RubyKaigi, I think the first time I came was 4 years ago. I studied Japanese for a year before I got the nerve to come to Japan, and even then my skills weren't good enough to know what was going on. I met Leonard Chin for the first time here. I came to Japan for a week. Nobody spoke English to me. Everything was in Japanese. And then I came to RubyKaigi and I met Leonard Chin and he said hello to me in perfect English, but with an Australian accent. So I was very confused. I had no idea what was going on. How is this possible? But anyway, my name is Patterson. I work for AT&T. I am an open source developer there. I just work on tools for AT&T, like working on Rails or Ruby, whatever we need, open source tools that we need to do our jobs. You can find me on the internet as at tenderlove. I have many secret names though, secret identities, and basically none of these identities are known to people in the outside of Japan, so I only use them on the Japanese mailing list. I'm also known as Pink Warrior, Hige no Yama Otoko, and I like this one a lot, so I bought a Henkon. And I'm also known as Takoyaki Kamen, and you can find me on Twitter as Takoyaki Kamen. I got these secret identities just because I wanted to practice Japanese and just separate my Japanese self from my English self, so that, you know, if I make mistakes in Japanese, nobody knows that it's me. But I guess that's a little too late now, you all know. I'm a Ruby core committer. I'm also a Rails core committer, and I think I'm the only one that has those two at the same time. But I would like that number to increase. I think it would be much better if we had more Ruby core developers that were also on Rails core. But before I get really into the technical details of my talk, I want to talk a little bit about the future of Ruby. And, I forgot to mention, I'm glad that I'm the first keynote so that maybe Matt won't fall asleep and he will see what the future of Ruby is. So we all know Matt's joined Heroku, right? And I think I read in an interview of his, he said that the future of Ruby is distributed computing. So I want you all to think about a machine. And you all have this machine in your office, okay? All of you do. But you probably don't use it very much. And it is a printer. So the project that I want to do is I want to write a Ruby interpreter in PostScript and call it PS Ruby. And then maybe we can take Ruby and put it onto printers and then start using all these extra CPU cycles that are sitting around in people's offices. And this will be truly distributed Ruby development. So I want you to look forward to PS Ruby in summer 2013. I'll be presenting about PS Ruby at Ruby, well, I guess since this is the last RubyKaigi, some conference in Japan in 2013. How's that? I come from Seattle, and we have a programming dojo, and I wanted to share with you how Seattle does their programming dojo. This is our sensei. So we have a programming sensei, and we do practices. So and then we do code katas. We also do pair programming. So sometimes I make a mistake, and that's what happens. So I made a movie about our programming dojo, so I'm going to share that with you now. So I want to talk a little bit about, in this talk I'm going to talk about boundaries. I want to talk about Ruby core development on Ruby core itself, and I want to talk about Rails core development, so development on Rails core itself. And I want to kind of examine the differences between the two and what it's like to work on one and what it's like to work on the other, and maybe look at similarities between the development styles in these projects and the way that we do things at work, too. So I used to work at a high school reunion website. It was very famous in the United States for a while, but they are now gone. I was a Perl programmer there for a while, for a few years, and then I was a Java programmer. And once we switched from Perl to Java, we had a lot of repositories that depended on each other. So our build process required that, one repository built the other one. We had to build them in a certain order, and if you didn't get the order right, the website wouldn't work. And the problem was, at this company, we had a team who was dedicated to making sure that the build worked, right? And then we had another team that was the development team, and they just wrote all the Java code. And we had this separation between the two, but one problem that I had developing there is that these many repositories didn't know about each other. So when you built one, it didn't know to build its dependencies. Every developer in the company had to know, oh, okay, well, I have to go build this other repository before I build this, this main one. So I asked the build managers, I said, can you fix our ant scripts to make sure that all the dependencies work properly? And they said, well, no, we can't do that because we're not developers. That's not our job. And I said, okay, well, is it okay if I go in and change all of the build scripts? Because, this would really make my life a lot better. I'm a developer and I can do that. And they said, well, no, you're not on the you're not on the configuration build process team, so you can't do that. It was very frustrating. I had to live with this for quite a few years before I quit. But that's the type of dependencies that I kind of want to talk about. Ruby core is split up. If you go check out the Ruby core source, you'll see that it's split up into many different sections. We have core classes, libraries, and extensions. So you'll see we have a lib directory, an ext directory, and then also core classes in the main directory. So we have a list in the Ruby wiki that says who maintains each of those sections. And if there's no maintainer, it will say none. Now, each maintainer is supposed to maintain their particular section, and if I want to go in and modify somebody else's section, I can't really do that. I'm not supposed to. I have to send a patch to maybe the mailing list or something, or ask permission. And maybe if I build up a good relationship with that particular person, I can commit there myself. But typically, I'm not supposed to do it. You can see this list here if you want to go check it out. Another division that we have among Ruby core is language. Most of the Ruby core developers are here in Japan. Most of them speak Japanese. And then we have another side of this equation, which is English speakers. So we have two core mailing lists. One is the English-only core mailing list, where we communicate with each other, and the other one is the Japanese list. Now, the good things about this setup is that we have experts working on a particular topic. So for example, in Ruby core, I maintain the YAML section. And I make sure that it's my business to know everything there is to know about YAML. So when we have a problem, with our YAML libraries, I can take care of it, and I can look into all of these things and deal with it. And it makes sure that we have experts dealing with these topics and stability throughout these particular libraries. So it's very low risk making modifications. And another cool thing is that many languages are okay. It's okay for us to have, we accept Japanese speakers and English speakers. It's good. Many open source projects are just English only. So if somebody doesn't know how to speak English, then they have a problem communicating with the developers of those open source projects. So it's good that we have multiple languages. But there's also bad points to the way that we develop on Ruby core. And one of the bad points is that many languages are okay. It's a good and a bad point. The problem being that we have core developers who speak only Japanese. And they don't really speak English very much. And we have a lot of English speakers that don't speak Japanese at all. So we have kind of a section of our team can't communicate. We have certain people on our team that it's difficult for them to communicate. So this is a bad point, I think. I think that our development speed is not fast enough, too. So because we have these experts that deal with the certain sections inside Ruby core itself, we have to wait on those people. For example, if somebody files a bug with something that I'm maintaining in Ruby core, we have to wait until I have the free time to go deal with that. So, maybe I'm on vacation, or maybe I'm busy with work or something, I just don't have time for it. But when I do get time, I fix it, and I fix it very well. So we have to wait for these people. I think it also gives us a low velocity. So the release cycle of Ruby is, let's say I add new features to my particular section. These new features aren't actually going to get rolled out until the next version of Ruby. So let's say I make a change right after 1.9.2 is released. I have to wait maybe a year until 1.9.3 is released for everybody else to get my new APIs. So in order for me to fix APIs or improve my code, improve the things that everybody else can do, it's a very slow cycle. And if we examine the standard library of Ruby a little bit closer, if we look at it under a microscope, we'll see there's actually a few inconsistencies. And these inconsistencies kind of bother me, and I think they're a little bit bad for other people looking into the language. If you install Ruby 193 today, you'll see you have standard library, and some of them are gems. So if you go in and install 193 and you do a gem list, you'll see you actually have some gems. But the rest of standard library are not gems. So why is that? We have this other boundary here. We have gems and not gems in standard library. So I think that's kind of a strange inconsistency to have. The other thing that I think is strange is we have external repositories for some of these things in standard library. For example, if you want to make a change to Ruby gems, you can't just make a change inside of Ruby itself. It doesn't work. You have to go modify, send a pull request to the Ruby gems maintainer, and then they'll merge it into their repository, and then that gets merged into Ruby trunk itself. So it's kind of strange because we have this extreme division among standard library maintainers. Some people like myself don't care. Other committers can commit to my section just fine. I really don't care. Some people do want to know, want you to submit patches to say redmine. Some don't even keep their code inside of Ruby trunk itself, which I think is kind of strange. It means that Ruby core, we're all the same team, yet not the entire team can commit. So it leaves me wondering, are those things actually part of Ruby? If I were to remove Ruby gems today, or one of those other things that I listed, would it still be Ruby? And then, since we're all on the Ruby core team together, but we can't commit, it makes me wonder, are we actually on the same team? Why do we have these things outside of Ruby? So, those are just some of the things I think about. Now I want to talk a little bit about Rails development style. Rails, like Ruby, is also split up. We have a few different gems. This is not exhaustive, but each section is split up. And if we compare the responsibilities of the committers between Ruby core and Rails core, in Rails core we see all committers are responsible. We don't have particular sections in Rails core like we do in Ruby core. So anybody can commit anywhere. But I think that this is also a problem. It means that no committers are owners. They don't own a particular section. So it's difficult to have somebody push something forward or have a strong opinion. For example, in Ruby core, if somebody commits something, I have a particular section I watch. And if somebody commits something there that I think is bad, I will just revert it and say, too bad. No, I am the person who has the opinions about this particular section. So I say what goes and what doesn't. But unfortunately, this isn't the case among Rails core. We have to argue with each other about who goes where and what happens. The other problem, well, I don't know if it's a problem, all committers are release managers. Which means no committer owns the release. So we don't have a particular committer who has a vested interest in the release going out. And what happens is, with this, we have late releases. For example, Rails 3.1 is not out yet. We don't have a person dedicated to doing the release for Rails. I think this is a problem. But on the other hand, when we compare velocity with Ruby core, we have a high velocity. So it's very easy for us to get patches in, get bugs fixed, get things pushed into Rails itself. But it's also high risk. So the other problem with having no release manager is we don't get backports pushed through all of the branches consistently. Since all committers are responsible for the release, it's up to each committer to make sure that each patch is backported to each branch. And because of this, backports get lost. So you'll have a bug fix maybe in the Edge version that never gets backported to the bug fix version. Rails also has many dependencies, but none of these dependencies are imported into Rails core itself. So we draw clear boundaries about who is responsible for what section. We say we are responsible, Rails core is responsible for all of the things in the Rails repository. We all take care of it. It is ours. All of our gem dependencies are outside. We keep them outside, there for other people to maintain. Now, I think we can take a look at this. And by we, I mean Ruby core. I think we can take a look at this development style and take the good things from it and improve ourselves. And I think the best example of that was shown when Yugui-san sent out the 193 release plan. So she had a sentence in there that really struck a chord with me. It said, your contribution to bug fixes are necessary to release Ruby 193 on time. I think this is very important. We don't have all the time in the world. We have a limited amount of time on Earth, so it's important for us to get things fixed as soon as possible. Right? I don't know that we have enough time. I don't know that you all have enough time to wait for me to do a particular bug fix in my section. Maybe one of the other Ruby core people can take care of it. People who do have free time. The other thing that she said is, feel free to commit your patch to the Ruby 193 branch for bug fixes. I really like this. Feel free to commit. This is what we do in Rails core. We feel free to commit. And I think that everybody in Ruby core should have the same opinion too, but we have to get past these blocking issues of like why can't I commit to things that are in Ruby core or that are in Ruby gems or in, I don't know, Rake or whatever, even though they're part of Ruby itself. The other side to feeling free to commit though is feeling free to revert. Right? When somebody applies a patch to Ruby or any project, you shouldn't have your feelings hurt when somebody comes along and reverts it. They probably have a good reason for it. But with these freedoms, we have a great responsibility, which is the responsibility to communicate with each other. If we're going to have the freedom to commit whenever we want to, whatever we want to, and revert whatever we want to, we need to have clear communication channels. I think this may be an issue in Ruby core. It's difficult for us to communicate between the two language barriers. One thing I think is interesting is a lot of people I talk to think that there's some sort of conspiracy on the Japanese Ruby dev list that there are all these important decisions made on the Japanese dev list and they never make it to the Ruby core list. And I know this is wrong, but the reason I know this is because I read Ruby dev. I can read Japanese, so I see what's going on, but my skill level isn't high enough to go in and respond and dive into the conversation. When I do, I typically make people mad at me, or I can't respond fast enough. So I know this isn't true, but since we have these two mailing lists, we get this misconception going on. Anyway, I really think it's important that when you're working on a team together, just use your best judgment. Is this something that's okay to commit? Do I think it's risky? If I think it's risky, I should just go talk to the person, go speak to the person who's the main maintainer. If it's not risky, I'll just commit it. So the other question we have to ask ourselves is, what is standard library? I really think that we need to take a look at standard library and figure out what things actually belong in there and what don't. So I was talking to, while I was back in Seattle preparing these slides, preparing this presentation, I was talking to Ryan Davis, ZenSpider, the mini-test maintainer. And I said to him, well, mini-test is in standard library, and we're all on the Ruby core team, so why don't you keep mini-test inside of, why don't you maintain it inside of trunk? Don't you think that we should all be able to commit to this? And he said to me, well, mini-test is third-party software that ships with Ruby. So I never thought about any of standard library that way. In my opinion, I always thought if it's in standard library, it is Ruby. But then I heard this other opinion that it is third-party library that ships with Ruby. I think we need to figure out which parts of Ruby are these third-party libraries, and we need to remove them from Subversion. We should only keep in Subversion what we maintain. We also need to embrace out-of-band releases. So it needs to be okay for us to release gems and have third-party things that are distributed with Ruby. So the way I think that this should work is, at the time of Ruby packaging, we need to take things that are in standard library, convert them into gems, then take the third-party ones, like Minitest, for example, and bring them in, and have a top-level Ruby gem that depends on all of these. Then we ship all of these gems along with the Ruby tarball. And when somebody goes and installs Ruby, each of these gems just gets installed by default. I think this would give us vast advantages because it allows us to iterate faster, iterate APIs faster. So think about this. I want to add new methods or whatever to NetHTTP, for example. Today, I have to wait for a year for each release, approximately a year for each release to improve the APIs. But if there was a gem release, then I could release as frequently as I want to with good versioning systems. Now, that's one advantage, but another important advantage is that, let's say I'm running an application and I depend on a certain API from NetHTTP. I depend on this for my application, but I want to upgrade Ruby. Say I'm running on an older Ruby and I want to upgrade my Ruby. I can't upgrade my Ruby because maybe the NetHTTP API has changed. I think it would be really cool if I was able to upgrade Ruby and then downgrade the NetHTTP gem. So I could actually get new language features and maybe a faster VM put into production and not have to rely on or not have to change all of my code to go along with the newer version of NetHTTP that ships with Ruby. So that's one thing I would like to see changed. I want to talk about Rails programmers now and development tools. While I was working at this reunion website, we had presentations. We would give internal company presentations. And I gave a presentation on Rails. We were doing J2EE stuff at the time, all Java stuff. And I gave a presentation on Rails. I said, hey, we should take a look at this. I think this is really cool. And while I was giving the presentation, one of the senior software engineer guys there got really upset at me and said, we will never use this. We will never use this technology. And he got really mad at me, and then he stormed out of the room. And I just thought to myself, well, it's just a tool. You don't need to use this in production if you don't want to. It's just something new to learn. So why would you get mad over this? So after that, I hear a lot of people saying, well, oh, that person's just a Java programmer, or that person's just a Rails programmer or whatever. And I don't like hearing that because those particular things, they're just tools. It's just a thing that we use to complete our jobs during the day. So it doesn't really say anything about that person themselves, right? It just says what kind of technologies they work with. So where did we get this term Rails programmer? I like this tweet from Matt. Somebody asked, how is Rails better than other Ruby implementations? And Dr. Nick replied with, well, it's better than Java. So I think the way that we got this term is maybe from branding. Ruby on Rails? Why is Ruby on Rails? It's not on Rails. Shouldn't it be Rails on Ruby? It uses Ruby. I don't understand. So I think the term, though, is important, for example, for job seeking. Now, when somebody says Rails programmer, I need a Rails programmer. What they're really saying is, well, I need somebody who knows Ruby, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, SQL, other, XYZ technologies, some sort of web technologies. And they have to know how all of these things work together. Now, granted, there are people out there who don't know anything about technology and they just say, I need a Rails programmer, and they don't know what it means. They just know they need a Rails programmer. But some people actually know what it means and they want these particular skills. We compare that with when somebody says, well, I need a Ruby programmer. Maybe a Ruby programmer needs to also know C or C++. If they're working on MRI or Rubinius, or maybe they need to know Java because they're working on JRuby. But we can't really tell what the technology use is. All we know is that, well, they just need to know Ruby. I think the point of the term is that we have a specific need. So we say that, we need a Rails programmer. We have specific needs for that technology. So it's a little more difficult to say, I need to hire a Ruby programmer. I think another source of this term is Ruby books. So one of the reasons that I learned Japanese was to understand documentation for Ruby. I saw so many websites about Ruby that were all written in Japanese, and I wanted to know what people were talking about, what people were saying. So Japanese literature about Ruby was very interesting to me, which is why I started learning Japanese in the first place. And I think it's interesting if we compare books that are available in Japan. So we have D-Ruby, Esoteric Languages. This one's one of my favorites. I love this. I love this book. We talk about, rap. So what's interesting, though, is that in Japan, there are many books about particular topics, right? We have a book about D-Ruby. We have a book about Rack. There are single topic books, and it's not necessarily about Ruby itself, but about that tool that we're going to use with Ruby. Where if we compare that to the United States, we'll see books like, okay, we've got Programming Ruby 1.9, so a book about the language, and then we've got Agile Web Development with Rails. That's pretty much all we have. We have, books about Ruby the language itself, and books about, Rails programming. And I think that's kind of a problem for new people coming into Ruby. Because, well, they come, a new person comes to the bookstore and they say, well, what can I build with Ruby? Say, well, I want to build something. What can I build with Ruby? And since Ruby is a general purpose programming language, they can build anything. So what happens is they build nothing because they don't know what to build. The answer is, well, you can build anything. I have this problem with Netflix DVDs. I can choose any DVD in the world, any DVD at my fingertips, and I can't make a decision. And the reason is because I have too many choices. When a new person comes into a bookstore and they see a Rails book, and they say, well, what can I build with Rails? Well, you can build a website. And they say, oh, I want to build a website. Let's build a website. So they get the book, and then they learn Rails. And I think this is how people end up learning Rails before they learn Ruby. And that causes books like this, Ruby for Rails. This book makes absolutely no sense to me. If you're programming with Rails, you're already doing Ruby, but for some reason, we have to have this book. So I think that's an issue. The other issue with Rails programmers, I think, is we get tickets on Ruby core itself. People file tickets saying, hey, my Rails app segvies. And everybody's just like, okay, it segvies. And they say, well, here's my Rails app. And you're like, oh, I have to install 1,000 gems, and I have to make sure that I load these particular web pages. And the problem it's just too much work for any of the Ruby core maintainers to track down these problems. So then people say, oh man, I hate getting bug reports from Rails people. These Rails people, But I don't really think that we can blame them. I mean, they just wanted to learn this new technology, so they go to the store and pick up a book, and then something goes wrong, and they see that it's SegVs, and they don't really know what to do, so they go report a bug with Ruby. They don't think that Rails could SegV. I mean, Rails shouldn't ever SegV, so they go report a bug with Ruby, but they're not skilled enough to track down how to reproduce that particular bug. The other thing I want to say about Rails programming is that the web is not easy. If you look at all those technologies that you have to know to be a Rails programmer, you have to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, SQL, Ruby, Rails APIs. You have to know, today now, you have to know CoffeeScript or whatever, and you have to know how all of these things work together. In my opinion, it's a miracle that any of these things work at all. The other thing that we have to realize about these new Rails programmers is that they're actually our future experts. So today they're reporting SegVs with their Rails app, but maybe if we can teach them how to track down these particular problems, they can go help other people tracking down SegVs in their Rails applications so that we don't have to do it. I think another way to solve this problem is if we can get specific. I love these single topic books that I see in Japan. I want to encourage authors here to take these books to the United States. I want to see English versions of these books. I really hope that someday I can go into the bookstore and find a book that's Ruby for Rack programmers. Something like this. I learned how to program Rack, but I don't know Ruby at all. So, the next thing I want to talk about are things that I want in Ruby itself. Bugs that I see, behaviors that I don't like, things that I want to see change. First one I want to talk about is encoding. I love the encoding system that we have in Ruby 1.9. It makes me very happy, but there's one particular bug with it that really, well, I guess it's not a bug, it's an expected behavior, but this behavior really bothers me. It's when we take ASCII 8-bit strings and concatenate them together with other encodings. So let's take a look at what happens. We have some string here, and we make it binary, and then we concatenate it with some other thing, and when we run that, we see, oh, hello world. Okay, great. So we do the same thing with EUCJP encoding, and then we see, hello world. Awesome. Shift GIFs, exactly the same thing. So we expect that when we take these particular strings and concatenate them together, it figures out what to do and everything just works. We see hello world. But then you come along and say, well, I want to say world in Japanese, so you do this, and it blows up. It doesn't work. You say, well, I was concatenating a UTF-8 string before. This one's a UTF-8 string too. When I concatenate it in here, why is this one special? Why doesn't this one work, yet the other ones do? So why does this break? And the reason it breaks is because Ruby takes a look at that string that's concatenating with and sees, oh, well, these characters fit inside of the ASCII 8-bit encoding thing, and then it says, okay, well, WORLD, it'll fit in there, so we'll just concatenate those bytes together. And I know some of you out there are saying, hey, don't use force encoding. You shouldn't be doing that. And you're right. All of that code that I showed you before was actually buggy. I should never be force encoding with binary. But unfortunately, it's a common problem, and it comes from RB-stir new. So in C, when you create a new string with rbstir_new, the default encoding on that string is binary. And it makes sense, because we don't know what the string's encoding is at that time. Where this really comes into play is, let's say we have a bug in some software. Somebody forgot to add the encoding. This actually happens today. For example, with a MySQL gem. If we run this code and select my name out of, just say, hey, select Aaron from MySQL using this library. This is the native one, not the pure Ruby one. The pure Ruby one works great. But let's say we do this. We see that the encoding is ASCII 8-bit. Came back out as ASCII 8-bit. Now let's say we're selecting something that's user input. Takoyaki Common registered at a website, so he put his name in. When we select that Takoyaki Common back out, it's in binary encoding, and when the string concatenation happens, we see an explosion. It breaks. This wouldn't seem like so much of a problem, except that we concatenate strings together in ERB when we build our websites. And then in the United States, most of the time, most people have ASCII names, right? So they enter in their ASCII name and everything is fine. But then somebody comes along and enters in a UTF-8 character and something blows up, like we get a 500 error. Something in the website blows up, and the strange thing is, it only blows up sometimes. Once. You're like, well, that just happened once. I don't care about it. We got a 500 once. I don't care. But really what you're saying is, well, I don't care about people who have UTF-8 names. So I really think, my opinion is that most ASCII 8-bit plus other encoding, concatenating with other encoding, it's an error. The reason it's an error is because where we get these strings, they have encodings associated with them. When we pull a string out of the database has an encoding. We know the encoding. HTTP headers indicate the encoding. RFC specs indicate the encoding. Our magic comments in the Ruby codes indicate the encoding. If an encoding isn't associated with that string, and we're concatenating two of them together, it should always raise an exception, in my opinion. This inconsistency of behavior really seems bothersome to me. The other thing I want to see is load path objects. I know this was proposed to Ruby core quite a while ago, but I really want to see this. What I mean by load path objects is I want to be able to push an object onto the load path. Implement some particular API and push this on, rather than just pushing on the path to somewhere on the file system. And the API I want to see for this, I want it to steal Ruby's file API. So the point behind that being that I could just say, hey, let's push the file constant onto the load path. It should behave exactly the same as if I push dot onto the load path. And I think this would be really awesome because let's say, today when we say require foo, we think about this as a file. Somewhere on the file system. We're bound to the file system. What if when we said require foo, we could load something from the internet? I think that would be pretty cool. Or maybe we could load something from SQLite. Keep all of our Ruby code in a database. I think that would be really exciting. The other thing I want to see in Ruby is dtrace support. This was in Ruby trunk a while ago. It got reverted. I would like to see it happen, see it back in again. And the advantages of having dtrace support are, we had an email sent to Ruby core, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago, where, what was it, Mame-san was saying, hey, RubyGem seems to create many objects. The number of live objects is proportional to the cost of the GC mark phase. So RubyGems was creating a lot of objects. It's slowing down Ruby itself. And we need to figure out where these objects are coming from. But the problem is we can't really tell, we need to find out what objects are being allocated. And we need to find out, where are they being allocated. The tools that we have today are set trace func, GC profiler, and object space. So let's say we have this simple program. It just creates arrays forever. Maybe this is buried somewhere deep in our code. We don't know where it is. but we know that it's happening somewhere and we need to find it. So today, if we use set trace func, we can trace our program. So we set up our little set trace func and we run our program along with this code, and we can see output. So we can see where things are happening. We can see where things are happening, but we can't really tell what. So we can't really tell that there was an array allocation happening there. The other thing we can do is we can say, well, let's take a look at the GC profiler. So we take a look at the GC profiler and we see, well, we're creating a bunch of objects. We know what the sizes are, but really we have no idea where those objects are being created, and we don't know, what they are either. The other thing we can do is take a look at count objects, object space. So we can see what the types are, and this is pretty cool. So we can see what objects are being created, but unfortunately, we can't see where they are. We see what they are, but we can't really see where they are. Now, with dtrace, what we can do is we can write scripts like this that say, hey, I want to know where all array allocations are happening. Say, tell me about array allocations, tell me about the file where they are and the line where they are. I want to know that. So we have this script that says, hey, tell me where those allocations are. We run our program, and we should see, come on, dtrace. There's all of our array allocations. We see there's some happening in Ruby gems, there's some happening in our file, and we have that sleep going on. So we see, oh, line 2. Okay, cool. So we know where to go fix that. dtrace will tell us where, and it will tell us what. The other cool thing is we saw earlier, oh, it's all, we have all this stuff in rubygems.rb. Like, we don't care about rubygems.rb. That's their own thing. We care about our code. We can actually filter our results in dtrace. So we'll say, well, I only want to know about, things in my program file. So we modify our D script here. And when we run this again, come on, dtrace. Typing so fast. We see only array allocations that occur inside of our script. So we can filter these results. The other important thing about dtrace, other thing that I think is important about dtrace, is we can attach to processes live. So all those examples that I showed you earlier of Ruby's profiling capabilities means that we have to go actually write the code, restart our application, and go investigate what's going on. But with dtrace, we can say, all right, I'm going to attach to a PID and run it. So we'll run our looping program in one terminal, get the PID in the other terminal, and then go attach to it with dtrace, and we can see, oh, hey, there are some array allocations happening inside of our currently running program. So we can add possible probes we can add, or for object allocation, all of these things, method calls, GC events, anywhere where we really want to know about profiling the system. Now the catch is, we need to actually put these probes into the Ruby source itself. And unfortunately, it only works on operating systems that support dtrace. So this is kind of a catch, but I think that it's worth it for people who need to do this type of profiling on their Ruby applications. Ruby ruined my life. I mentioned earlier I used to be a Java programmer. I was a Java programmer for like, I don't know, 6 years or something. Longer than I should admit. Please don't tell anybody I was a Java programmer. And the entire time, I was waiting for Perl 6 to be released. I used to be a Perl programmer. I loved dynamic languages. It was so great. And then I switched to Java. Actually, it was during the dot-com crash was happening in the United States, and basically my boss said to me, all right, you need to learn Java or you're going to have to go find another job. And I said, well, I will learn Java. That seems fine. So I learned Java, and I really hated it. I didn't like it. I mean, the language itself was fine, but, building applications was terrible. My life was miserable. And the entire time while I'm waiting for Perl 6, all of a sudden I found Ruby. I started playing with Ruby, and I'm like, wow, This technology is amazing. This is exactly what I'm waiting for. I don't need Perl 6 anymore. I have Ruby. This is awesome. This is so great. But finding Ruby made my life even worse. The reason it made my life even worse is because here I am at my day job. I have to code J2EE Java stuff all day. And I have this beautiful language here that I can't use. Just can't use it. Even worse is that I read this quote from Matt. Ruby is designed to make programmers happy. And yet, it was making me miserable because I couldn't use it. So, I decided to quit my job. I quit my job. I took a 40% pay cut to go work at a Ruby startup company. And then I became happy. I got to use Ruby all day. My life was much better, but during that particular time, wow, terrible. So I took this job, a huge pay cut, but I was so happy and my life improved from then on. It's been so great. So what I want to tell people is the thing I learned from this was to take chances. Just do it. Go for the thing that you like. So I want to end with, if there's anything that I can tell you to take away from this talk, I want you to learn, I want you to teach, I want you to communicate, and most importantly, I want you to take risks and to keep our community alive. So, thanks. I have to say thank you for the geese. Thanks, Dr. Brain, Evil Twin. Thank you, RubyKaigi. So, no Ruby, no life. So, thank you. Now, before I end here, I want to invite a couple of my friends on stage. It's Carl from Carl Huda. It's his birthday next week. So I want to invite him and his girlfriend up on stage right over there. Yeah, so anyway, he's a great person, a good friend of mine, and I'm very happy, happy to wish him a happy birthday. And so, I'm glad he's up here, and yeah, so you guys are all reading this, right? Okay. Yeah. All right. So Tiffany, can you wish him a happy birthday?
Carl-san, cake on shite kudasai?
Thank you. Arigato. Hi. It's a hard ring.
Do you understand?
What? I'm confused right now.
All right. Thanks, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Aaron. では、アーロンさんのキーノートにもう一度皆さん盛大な拍手をお願いします。
ありがとうございます。